We start at the very beginning to Wilhelm Wundt's first psychological lab, which is important because it was the first psychological lab. He worked with his protege, Edward Titchener, and together, they developed a thing called structuralism, which supposed that the brain was made of basic structures. Next, we have William James and the world's first psychological textbook. He also developed the idea of functionalism, structuralism's opposite, that supposed it would be better to study the functions of the brain instead of the structure, with the one and only Charles Darwin, aka Mr. Galapagos Finches, aka the greatest beard that has ever existed. We are left with only two major psychologists, Paul Broca and Karl Wernicke, who discovered the brain parts very cleverly named, Wernicke's area and Broca's area. The two areas are detrimental for language, for the Wernicke's area helps with processing language, so you can understand when that one guy at Costco asks you where the produce section is. And Broca's area helps with being able to speak language, so you can tell that one guy at Costco to mind his own business. In this section, we see all of the fun experiments done on animals and children to study how things learn things so they don't die. One man named Ivan Pavlov conducted an experiment where he made a dog drool to a sound through classical conditioning, learning from associations between a conditioned and unconditioned stimulus. Every time he gave the dog food, it would drool. So he decided to sound a tone whenever he offered the dog food long enough to cause an association between the food and the sound. Then, after only sounding the tone, the dog would drool without the food. John B. Watson was also known for his experiments on classical conditioning. The Little Albert experiment involved a child coincidentally named Little Albert associated with a mouse and making an extremely loud banging sound whenever he got close to it. Bang. 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 Now that he has associated the mouse with the scary banging noise, not only did the conditioning make him fear mice, but anything with visible fur like dogs and rabbits and apparently, white fur coats. We move from classical conditioning to operant conditioning, which is learning from consequences rather than associations. For example, if you murdered someone and you were sent to jail for it, you would be less likely to murder someone again. B.F. Skinner is known for his invention, also very cleverly named the Skinner box, which is pretty similar to a normal box, except you put all of your childhood nightmares in it. Inside, this invention included a lever, a food dispenser, and the standard electrified grid floor. You would put an animal like a mouse in this box and see how it reacts to punishments and rewards to influence its behavior. If it didn't do what the researchers wanted, they would turn on the grid. If it did, they would give it food via the dispenser. As you might have suspected, the animal soon took a liking to doing whatever they said, demonstrating operant conditioning. Albert Bandura conducted an experiment on observational learning, which seems pretty self-explanatory. He trapped a kid in a room with an adult and a Bobo doll and made them watch as the adult beat up, harmed, violated, victimized, impaired, damaged, assaulted, maltreated, molested and beat up the Bobo doll. After the researchers angered the child, they saw that the children that watched the adult copied their actions, as well as being creative with mallets, toy guns, and even shouting vulgar language, probably things like, shoot, heck, crap, frick, or what is this bull? Elizabeth Loftus, also known as the destroyer of eyewitness reliability, is known for her research in the misinformation effect, when false memories are created by post-event information. For example, if you had just witnessed a crime scene and you were asked if the person was wearing a Nike shirt and they were really wearing a shirt like this, you would be likely to say yes because they gave information beforehand. This is problematic for eyewitnesses as they could easily say false information and end up arresting a 6-year-old for a bank robbery. In language, Noam Chomsky believed that everybody had some sort of innate language acquisition device that we are all born with to help us pick up on languages. This made sense because all throughout history, all of our languages use the same basic building blocks: nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs. However, this sparked a debate with Skinner. Remember B.F. Skinner? Well, he opposed Chomsky and said that all knowledge of grammar and language is learned and that there is no innate device for learning languages. In this chapter, we give the spotlight to a man named Abraham Maslow, who made the once again very creatively named Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The hierarchy is ordered starting with physiological needs like food, water, oxygen, normal temperature, stuff that the body can't physically live without. The next level is safety, which means feeling that you won't get mauled by a bear, or that you won't get robbed in the middle of the night, or that your country is run by a reliable leader. Level 3 is family and love, which is about reproduction and family and making sure your child doesn't accidentally kill themselves. Level 4 is the need for a feeling of esteem and accomplishment, which all you need to do is not have Asian friends. Level 5 is self-actualization, where you seek for your true potential. Level 6 is self-transcendence, where you seek for a deeper meaning in life and cause. Obviously this pyramid isn't perfect and motivation doesn't always work like this. In some situations, humans are able to jump around the levels. Developmental psychology is all about how people and especially the brain grows throughout their life. We'll first look at Jean Piaget and his 4 stages of development. The first is the sensoromotor stage, which begins as the child gets sensations and motor coordinations, hence the name sensoromotor. The second is the preoperational stage, in which the child is able to process language and create imaginative thoughts, but still can't comprehend complex thought. The third stage is the concrete operational stage, where the child starts to understand concepts such as time and they are able to attach concepts to situations. The fourth and final stage is the formal operational stage, in which they develop theoretical, hypothetical, and abstract thinking. Erik Erikson made an 8-stage theory about psychosocial development, and in short goes in order: who are you? What can I do? Did I do good? Am I better than you? Who am I? Are we in this together? Is this the end? And what happened? Moving on from developmental stages, we find Harry and Margaret Harlow and their study of monkeys. Alright, now for a second, imagine your mother's touch. Soft, comfortable, smooth, maybe a little fluffy. Now imagine if she turned to stone. Hard, rough, cold, rugged, and overall just uncomfortable, but this time she has cookies. Which mom would a child in need of nourishment go to? Well, in a fairly depressing experiment where they ripped a monkey away from its mother at birth and trapped it in a room with a blanket and a cage with milk. The monkey went straight for blanket mom and showed the importance of the sense of touch and attachment in nature. Hey, wanna hear a name that you probably knew before you watched this video? Sigmund Freud. Freud is known for his theories about the unconscious mind and how it makes up the majority of our actions, as well as being the first psychotherapist. He also had theories about the ID, ego, and superego, in which the ID makes up the aggressiveness of our desires and the superego is all about doing the right thing. And then we have the ego, which pretty much tells them both to sit down and make a compromise. This theory is commonly represented by an iceberg that shows the comparison of the sizes of the conscious and unconscious. He believed that the balance of the ID, ego, and superego was what made up a person's personality. Carl Jung, who was a former student of Freud, took from his theories about the unconscious importance and made his own theory about the collective unconsciousness and how we practically have all the same unconscious ideas from our ancestors. We already know that all humans are really intelligent, but these guys wanted to test which humans are more intelligent than others. Let's start with Charles Spearman and his theory about general intelligence, or the G factor, which is the theory that there is only one intelligence and that is what you would measure to understand how smart someone is. He noted that those that score well in one area usually did in the rest. And not surprisingly, someone opposed him. Louis Leon Thursday Stone tested people with 56 different tests and believed in 7 different clusters of intelligence: word fluency, verbal comprehension, spatial ability, perceptual speed, numerical ability, inductive reasoning, and memory. However, as Spearman noted, those that did well on the tests usually did well on all of the other tests, so there was still evidence of some sort of G factor. Howard Gardner and Robert Sternberg also believed in multiple intelligences. Gardner considered people with savant syndrome, who show mental issues but extreme skill in specific areas such as drawing. He theorized 8 intelligences: linguistic, logical, mathematical, musical, spatial, bodily kinesthetic, intrapersonal, interpersonal, naturalist, and possibly existential. Robert Sternberg believes in a triarchic theory of intelligence made of analytical, creative, and practical. This theory was important because it was the only theory in which all intelligences could be reliably measured. When it became a law that children must attend school, the government didn't want the teachers to judge their students' learning potential. Alfred Binet was sent to find a way to judge the students for them. They noticed that smarter kids were able to perform as well as some older kids, so they decided to find their mental age in comparison with their actual age to find how intelligent a student was. After Binet died, Louis Terman noticed some errors with the test Binet gave to judge intelligence, like how questions developed in Paris didn't work with California school children. He made some adjustments and made the Stanford Binet test. From this test, William Stern derived the intelligence quotient, or IQ, which could be found using this equation. So if you are 21, you have to have a mental age of 2100 to watch Rick and Morty. To show the importance of roles in social psychology, Philip Zimbardo asked 24 volunteers to participate in the Stanford prison experiment. In the experiment, half of the participants were randomly chosen to be prisoners and the other half were guards. It was all pretend, but as the experiment carried on, the people who played the guards started to abuse their power more and more, since they were told they could do anything as long as it didn't hurt the prisoners. The prisoners also grew more and more to their roles, acted as if they deserved to be in jail. The experiment ended up showing how much the situation affects us instead of our moral judgment. In another social experiment that has just as much death and destruction, Stanley Milgram wanted to demonstrate the power of the foot in the door phenomenon, the tendency for people to accept big tasks after complying to smaller ones. The person being observed was fixed to play the role of the teacher, although they were never aware of it, while an actor would play the role of the student and was strapped with electrodes on his body. Supposedly, the teacher would deliver a shock to the student if he failed to memorize a set of words, and the shock level would gradually increase from 30 watts and eventually up to 450 watts. If the teacher hesitated to deliver the shock, probably because of the actor's obnoxious screaming, another actor called the researcher would tell the person first to please continue, then the experiment requires you to continue, then it is essential that you continue, and finally, you have no choice but to continue. About 60% of the teachers complied to deliver the full shock, and every single one of them delivered at least 300 watts. That is all the books have to offer, but there is still a lot we do not know about psychology. Maybe someday, somewhere, someone like you will end up creating a breakthrough in the field of psychology and make it in the future big boy books. But just to list a few things we are still completely clueless about: why do we really dream? How do you make consciousness? Can humans build a functioning brain? Why do people still believe in a flat earth? Like, why the actual